Good morning. I'd like to call this work session of the Southampton Town Board to order on this 14th day of October. Guys, and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the
republic for which it stands,
one nation,
under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice
for all.
Okay, so
Hi,
there's our clerk is here.
sorry, I was having some access issues.
Just in time Sunday to call the roll.
Excellent. Supervisor Schneiderman,
Here,
Councilman Lofstad, not with us, Councilman Martell,
Here.
Councilman Bouvier,
Here.
Councilman Scavone.
Present.
Excellent.
okay, so start morning with Janice Shearer, our Town Planning and Development Administrator. She is going to apprise us on some minor code amendments that she's recommending. So Janice, I'll turn it over to you.
Good morning, Mr. Supervisor, members of the board. Yes, I'm here today to just, we have a lot of changing circumstances as people who are, trying to plan uses and come in. This has been something that's been kicking around for some time now, where we have actually a few things, and they have to do with the business district's table of use regulations. As you know, we have zoning and the dimensional regulations. Sometimes if it's a permitted use, that's pretty much all we go by. If it's a special exception use, we have additional standards that we that you may sometimes enact to ensure, that there's safeguards and conditions in place if someone were to propose something. And then the other part of it is the table of use regulations, which we base largely off of this standard industrial classification code, which is slightly an archaic way of doing this, but we're still going by it. And sometimes uses don't appear, and so there's two that I'd like to discuss today. That one being indoor recreation or physical fitness facilities in LI 40 right now. And I don't know if I could share my screen or if it makes sense, but I can, right now the physical fitness facility is a use, which is basically a gym. It's under amusement and recreational business category. We allow them in VB, highway business, shopping center business, and not in any other zone. It used to be classified in LI 40 under amusement and recreational services not elsewhere classified, but there was some changes that took place in 2010 and somehow it dropped out. And so the question is whether or not you would consider, creating special exception standards to allow indoor physical fitness activities, or like a karate studio, or, something along those lines in an LI 40 district. And should we create standards around that? So I'll start with that. I just want to see if the board has any appetite for this. I recommend it. I think it's, we can, the mix of uses in LI 40 that, I think we're moving a lot further away from manufacturing and the, tight in the sense of the word in LI 40. And you end up with sort of places for special trade contractors to keep their stuff and things along those lines. So it's not necessarily a conflict of use. We can create standards to ensure that. Yes.
A couple sort of stage setting questions here. So first of all, LI 40 is light industrial.
I'm sorry. Yes. Light industrial.
And the 40 stands for what, like 1 acre or?
Yes, 40,000 builder's acre, 40,000 square feet is the minimum lot area you need
All right,
to
so-
in LI 40.
So LI 40 is one of our more intense commercial zones, is that right?
That's correct.
Is it the most intense commercial zone, LI 40?
Actually, LI 200 is probably the closest to heavy industry that we have here. And that's, there's not many places zoned LI 200 at all. Up by the Damascus airport, there's
So
some
you need
LI
like
200.
You need like a 5 acre site for LI 200?
Yeah, and that would be the place where you would locate a more,
A bigger,
say some kind of processing use or something where you need all that acreage so that you're not near anyone, to do whatever it may be that's permitted in the use tables.
so what, so in terms of this exercise studio, I mean, there are some places that get a lot of traffic, like your Soul Cycles of the world, and then there's, where people are maybe, they're really busy. I don't know, yoga studios sometimes aren't so, heavily used, dance studios and things like that. And then you have like your gyms, right? So are all those uses considered exercise, like the Equinoxes of the world or the Planet Fitnesses?
Yes, they would be falling under category 799, which is physical fitness facilities.
Physical
We
fitness?
also oftentimes use this category called other indoor activities, and it's kind of for anything else that's not listed. And that's how some of these places, they do exist already in LI 40, have come in. But there's, I think that in terms of these days where there's a lot more investment and concern that they're not going to be, someone's not going to be able to do it, they would like more certainty in terms of, do you want to allow it or not? Like a
What about
physical
those-
fitness. Yeah.
Those places like the indoor trampoline places or go-kart, that kind of thing, is that also fall into this category?
That would be under, that's already there. That would be
Like amusement type of?
amusement and recreation not were classified. And then it just has other services and it really doesn't get into it. So it says under this category, amusement and recreation services not elsewhere classified, it lists a motion picture theater, an art gallery, a commercial art gallery, and nothing else, other services. So the question is physical fitness facilities something that we can
Right.
actually write there like we do in the other zones? We actually have it. It says
Yeah,
physical
no,
fitness.
it's not, you're not suggesting we're putting it in a residential zone, you're putting it in an
No.
industrial zone. So, I mean, I'm not sure why it was left out, maybe to preserve these areas for the more adverse types of uses, to keep them, whatever.
Perhaps, but it does say art gallery commercial. So, I mean,
Yeah.
that's why it's just incompatible. Like if obviously we can create the special exception standards to make sure there's no conflict of use, and the planning board would then look at that and say, well, you can't have it here because there's this other thing existing right here and it doesn't make sense. But
Yeah.
right now there's no path at all to even ask.
Well, no, I'm glad we're discussing use tables because you have to every once in a while revisit your use table because uses come and go, there's not so many VCR repair shops anymore, there are new uses that emerge that weren't thought of 40 years ago when we did the use table. So I think it's important that, we continue to keep it current. But I have no other questions. I have no problem with allowing a dance studio in a light industrial zone. So, yeah, and you'd have to put together I don't even know if you really need special exemption standards, but I'm okay with that too if you put them together. But let me hear what other people have to say.
So Janice, in that LI 40 1 acre minimum, how big a building could they build? If they wanted to put a
That's
studio?
really a function of parking. We would go by a retail part, that parking facility would then require one space per every 180 square feet. So, it's usually a limitation when it comes, the building size always is somehow limited by the amount of parking and landscaping. You kind of have to back into it. But, yeah,
So it wouldn't be a
But, you know-
huge build out. You couldn't
no,
have a
they always
two-story
have
fitness.
same coverage and
Okay.
interior landscaping and all those same requirements come into play. Yeah,
Okay, thank you.
Do you actually need an acre in LI 40 or that's just the
Yes.
name of the zone? You do?
Yep.
So what if your lot's smaller than an acre?
well, you have an acre and you're allowed more than one use on that acre. So you're allowed more than one LI 40 use.
But what if you're located in an LI 40 zone, but you have half an acre lot?
You probably wouldn't be, but then you'd have to go to the ZBA to use that lot because you have an undersized lot in the zone. Yeah, but I think where we're saying is many lots are compliant, they are an acre, and people are looking to do these, sort of multiple uses within 1 acre. And one of those uses may be indoor fitness facility.
Okay.
But ultimately, the planning board reviews that for compatibility, correct? So
Right.
have they had a chance to opine on this at all?
Oh,
'Cause I
no,
still-
this is so preliminary. I just wanted to see if the board had any appetite to even go forward for us to create these standards and to start this process. So
I
we've
think
been approached by many different people for a while now, for actually several years since, but now that I'm here in this position, it's just like kind of a housekeeping thing. And I just
Right.
like to keep bringing these things to you and seeing like, what do you want to do about this or that? Regularly, because there's quite a bit of them, just in terms of keeping current with, like Jay said, like the supervisor said.
Yeah, I agree. There's other parts of this too that we should be looking at as well. So I totally agree with that. And you have to dig down a little deeper into this, particularly in the other category. So yeah, I would support that. But you're just getting a feel from us, right? And
Right, and now we're gonna develop, if we get the feel, we're gonna develop something for you to look at and bring forward, and of course, it would be referred to the planning board for their commentary, and then you can consider it in public hearings, and all that process would still be a normal part of it, but just if you're like, no way, that makes no sense to me, then, we're not gonna bother. So I just wanna get your sense of this before I go down that path.
Do we have a lot of LI 40 zone properties?
We could use more, I think, but we have a fair amount, and we can show you some maps and stuff like that. There's a good deal of it, mostly on the western. I mean, there's honestly that we could use more in a lot of ways, but there's really nowhere else to put it outside of the Pine Barrens, which we changed to
Okay.
residential. So
From a secret standpoint, what would be involved?
I think that this would be something where we could, it's really not enacted. It's not being landed anywhere. If somebody, like Rick said, if somebody was proposing some massive thing, then that would be the type
Right.
1 action. If it affected more than 25 acres, which I'll have to look at the total amount of LI 40 in the
But
town.
in a way, it would have a positive impact in the sense that it's a lighter use than the other uses allowed in the LI 40.
Right. It's
So,
very,
so
it's an indoor, fitness facility. It's
Right.
not, or
Right.
any other physical, anything on that umbrella, really.
Right, so it could have been an industrial use, but instead it's gonna be an exercise studio, so maybe that's
Right.
a lighter impact.
it
Tommy,
would be good for us to see the inventory too, particularly LI 40, but also LI 200 at the same time. I don't have a great sense. I think there's 4, if I recall,
Mhm.
but I
Sure.
may have.
Tommy,
Great. So
John,
I
did you have
wanted
a
to,
question?
I'm sorry.
I thought Tommy John had a question, I might have misread it.
Just a comment on what Janice is talking about, looking at some of the other uses in LI 40, job training and vocational rehabilitation, other school, medical and dental, and, the parks and some of the other uses here, it certainly would fit in. This is good. And I know there's a need for fitness facilities. People like them. They're a moneymaker. They create jobs. And, so it's certainly part of our society in a good way too. People should be going to gyms.
This is good. Health is good.
Yeah, and our sustainability plan says to find new ways to promote, the health of our communities. So I would say it's another way to promote that. Okay, so then that sounds great, and I'll move on to the next one. So I don't want to
Did we
take up
hear
too much
from,
more.
did Rick, did you have anything you
Oh,
want
I'm
to
sorry.
say?
I was just wondering if that included like tennis courts or pickleball courts or basketball courts indoors.
Yeah, I think it would. And it says physical, I mean, we can look at the term in the SIC, but it says physical fitness facility. That's basically what the category would be that you'd be adding in there. And we can write SE and just make sure there's no conflict of uses if there is other industrial uses, so that, safeguard, any conflicts. But other than that, I think that's a big catch-all.
Okay, thank you.
Tighten up the
Sure.
definitions too, Janice, so
Yep.
I think it's a good
Definition.
opportunity to do that.
Yes, I agree. Great. So then the next one is another use that is, so now we're going from the opposite direction. So self-storage facilities are right now only permitted in the light industrial zones, LI 40 or LI 200. There's been a number of inquiries as to whether or not the board would allow self-storage facilities to be in highway business zones. Obviously, again, safeguarding it with, buffers, and you're not going to see it and you're not going to hear it. And is this a use you would consider? And the whole process again would be vetted, but is this something that, it's a low traffic generator, which is what we're always out for when it comes to highway business. We really want those types of uses that are not retail and high traffic generators, because our highway business uses are mostly on those main collector roads that we're always trying to protect. So that's another one where it's actually X in every zone except LI 40 and LI 200. So this is whether or not I don't think it's appropriate to put it in village business or in a shopping center, but I think in highway business where it's set back and no one's ever going to see it or even know it's there except the people that use it, is that a bad thing?
Yeah, so I think this is one of those uses that's really has grown through the years. I don't remember these things really as when I was a kid, but now with all the, homeowners and a lot of second homeowners, and people just don't have enough room in their house to store everything they want. They keep changing furniture. I have one of these near where I live, and it's like 1 or 2 cars a day that go to this thing. It's almost zero traffic. People put stuff in and they leave it there for very long periods of time. And when I think of highway business like County Road 39, we've tried to pick uses that don't generate a lot of traffic, like car dealerships that, people don't go to every day. So to me, this is a perfect use. These storage pods, whatever you want to call them, self-storage units, it's perfect use for highway business. I think there may be some design considerations so that they don't look too industrial. But I think, to see more of these facilities, it makes a lot of sense in highway business. So I would definitely wholeheartedly support that one.
Yeah, I have a slightly different take on that, because I see what happened in West Hampton Beach. They have a big facility there, and it is very industrial looking. And it, I think I like the idea, but I think we have to, make sure that it's limited aesthetically as well. Because the way some of these facilities are built, they block view sheds and things like that. Where they go is critical, I think.
Yeah. Well, you could do it as a special exemption standard, though. I think they would have to go through ARB. I know the one you're talking about, right? The one by the airport, or at the airport?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that you don't see, right? That's pretty deep into that industrial area.
Well, no, there's one in the village of West Hampton Beach. I think it's still village up there. It's across a little far. It's by the railroad tracks where the old tennis courts used to be over there.
Okay. I know what you're talking about. Yeah, I'm not familiar so much with that one. There's like, I think it's called Uncle Bob's or something like that. That's the one near me. it's not unattractive. You know, it's a large building, but it's not a tall building. But it looks like any other sort of industrial warehouse type of building. We could have design standards so that they look better.
Yeah,
I would very much recommend that. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just don't know if you want a special exemption standard. Like,
Well,
I
you
mean,
can, you can have, no, like, I noticed there's these ones like pods or whatever. There's one by my house and it's pretty, it's, you know, kind of obnoxious. Like you could say no corporate franchise architecture type of stuff. Where you get out of that sense of, you know, you got to design it or you got to buffer it entirely that you don't see it.
my sense is it should be allowable use in highway business. It should be permitted. But we have design standards that they have to meet, but they shouldn't have to go through a special exemption process. I mean, that's just my thinking. It belongs in highway business.
there's a business model, I think, that's associated with those kinds of facilities, right? So they have to have a certain amount of available space to make it profitable as well to them. So, and you know, they tend to go as opposed to wide as a result. So I think that's something that we could define, and I think that because there is definitely a need for it.
Let's just see from the board is everybody okay? Let's put the issue about whether they need a special exemption, but is everybody okay with having self-storage in highway business zoning?
This is a popular use for retrofit buildings that were used other ways years ago. I've seen them come before the zoning board for variances to use their building like this. So yeah, I am okay with it in highway business.
Rick, you okay?
Yeah, I've actually used them for my business. I've seen them abused. I've seen them used for little car shops and stuff like that. The one John's talking about in West Hampton is a little uncharacteristic of the area. It's a little taller than I think it should be, but eventually there'll be something in front of it on street side and we won't see it as much. So definitely okay, but if we're going to need setbacks, height requirements, and definitely landscaping to keep them out of view.
That West Hampton one might be in the village. Might be.
It is in the village. That's why I brought it up, because you know what our standards are versus villages. I'm not sure what how compatible that is with our standards. That might be something to look at as well, because
that's taller than we allow, I think. I know the building you're talking about is quite tall, so.
yeah,
It's across the street from the new community center that you're working on right now.
yeah.
I think we can easily write SE standards that are not onerous, but at least it puts someone through the process and you really, it's not permitted unless you meet these standards. And that's basically it.
Good. So we won't have orange doors or pink doors or something like that? Or?
Right. I think, it has to maintain the design aesthetic of what we're looking for. We have design standards on County Road 39. We have, design standards along Montauk Highway and other highway business zones. So I think maintaining our high aesthetic standards while still allowing for the use is appropriate.
All right, so it sounds like we're okay as a permitted use in highway business.
I thought you said SE, like I can't put, P is just P, there's no standards. SE, it could be special general standards, and then there could be specific standards, as you're saying.
Well, you can't
about,
say that permitted uses have no standards. If I come in with a car dealership or a restaurant, I still have to meet, I still have to, comply to height and ARB and everything else.
True, but we don't have that extra ability to get what we want, but that's up to you. That's why I'm here.
So what are some of the permitted uses in highway business where you don't need to go special exemption?
Physical fitness facility. That's one that we were just talking about.
Well, that's
Bakery.
part. It's back to the definitions, Jay. The definitions are vague. I think that's sort of what's prompted this review, because the word "other" is all encompassing, and I think it needs more definition in the code.
Well, to me, self-storage should not when you say special exemption, it's shy of a permitted. It's permitted if you meet certain standards. You
Right,
don't-
and that's how we get the standards we want met.
But everything that is permitted goes through a review process. It goes through architectural and goes through, has to meet all the setbacks and everything else. So if an exercise studio doesn't need a special exemption, a bakery doesn't need a special exemption, a car dealership doesn't need a special exemption.
Car
And-
dealership does.
It does, it's SE?
Uh-huh.
All
Yes.
right, I don't care that much about it. So if you want to make it.
You
SE,
still have to go to the planning board either way. The special exception standards are just basically enumerating how you meet them. And it doesn't change much for someone coming
Legally,
in.
if you meet the special exemption standards, it's still considered a permitted use, and
That's right.
the planning board can't go, no, we're not going to let you do it, right? If you meet the standards, although they can determine that you don't meet the standards. So this could be some subjectivity there.
Right. But that's very rare. I mean, we're looking to develop and progress the community, with things that the community needs and wants. So,
Right, well, as long as the special exemption standards are fairly objective, so you can determine easily if they're met or not, I guess I'm okay with that. I'm
well,
trying
we'll
to
come
not
to you with
discourage-
those standards so you can assess them and determine whether they're onerous or not. Or arbitrary is what we're always trying to avoid. We want to keep them very clearly
Specific.
articulated and understood, right?
Well, I also, we have our energy and other goals in the town, and I think this may be a way to be able to put that over, particularly on new construction, on how efficient they are, the kind of energy use, what their emissions are, as we're, drive towards trying to define what our emissions output is for climate change, in consideration of climate change in going into the future. I think somehow that should be part of that. The reuse of old buildings, for a different standard, has some impacts on that subject and how we actually implement that going forward. I think, is this an opportunity for us to be able to put some of those qualifications onto these types of facilities?
So board, going back to, it sounds like everybody's okay with self-storage and highway business. I prefer just a permitted use, but I'm okay with special exemption. Can I just go around real quick? Do you want the special exemption standards or just make it permitted, simple permitted? Tommy John, you want to go first?
I'm okay with it. I think it's appropriate use in that area
As a permitted use.
as a permitted use, not special exemption, permitted.
John?
I think you need special exemption for some of the reasons we just talked about. I don't think it's quite that clear cut.
Rick?
Yeah, I'm special exemptions only.
All right. If, Tommy John, you're okay with special exemption if that's what?
It's the will of the board. I believe in democracy. So yeah.
No, it's 2-2, but
Yeah. No.
let's go. I'll switch over and go special exemption.
Okay.
And all right, so Jen, it's just, I think what the board is saying is don't make the special exemption standards too difficult.
Yeah, it's really going to come down to just designing it, buffering it, and making sure that it's not impacting anyone around it. That's pretty much it.
Okay.
Yeah, I would just like to have some of our sustainability requirements and to start getting folded into some of this stuff too. Can we take a look at that and see if that's
Sure.
That's
Right. Well, that's going to be, obviously we're talking about the stretch code and the commercial stretch code. So
Yep.
that would be captured under that.
okay? Great.
Yeah.
Let's keep going. guys.
All right, last thing, I don't know if you want to even get into this now, was just that, I know you've had work sessions with Mike in my office and Kathleen about recreational marijuana. There is a distinction in other places about medical marijuana dispensaries. If you want to leave it alone, do you want to make that distinction? and create a category for such uses where it's strictly not for recreation. It can't be converted to recreation, but these are medical dispensaries. Is this something that you would consider outside of the whole opt-in, opt-out situation, New York
So,
State recreational law?
all right, so is the question, what zones or how do we need to put medical marijuana on the use table, or do we
Right.
have?
If you want to make that distinction and say this is not the same as the recreational,
No, it's
store.
not the same as the recreation.
And
Medical
that we
marijuana,
don't have any kind of use, like we started out saying, this is something new. This is something we don't have. We never had this before. Do we write, medical marijuana dispensary as a use itself classified and then decide where it will go? Or,
just
you don't really want to worry about
understanding
it.
the use, because there is one in Riverhead now, right?
Right.
There's a medical marijuana dispensary. You need a prescription.
Yeah,
not
no
everybody-
one other than those who have the prescription can go there.
Right. So it's not a retail outlet. You need a prescription. It's like going to your doctor's office, right? And getting,
Right.
sometimes doctors have medications that they dispense as well, correct? So.
Well, wouldn't that be a use as a medical facility? That's how I understand it. I mean, as you said, Jay, it requires prescriptions. It's for medical use, not recreational use. Does our code looks at medical uses for buildings? Do we make that separation,
Right,
Janice?
so that I think is the question is, do we look at the medical office building and where medical offices are allowed? Is that where a medical marijuana dispensary can go?
Right.
Or are they a pharmacy? Do they go where pharmacies are? The only thing, like a pharmacy, you kind of cross into like your CVS's and Walgreens of the world. And, this you're only going with one, there's only one medicine that you can get. It's marijuana. And they're not selling a million other sundries.
Recommend it stay as separate name and use, not under medical arts, because it starts to blur what medical arts is.
So
Worry
you
about
want to
that.
place it on the use table?
I would
as-
like to call it, define it, and you decide where is appropriate to put it and any standards around that.
Okay, if
If the board is so inclined, of course.
it's a legitimate use. Medical marijuana is a legitimate use. I know plenty of people who have prescriptions who, drive up to Riverhead. It would be nice if they could get it here. I know the Shinnecocks are planning on building a medical marijuana facility. I don't have a problem with it. I think, it ought to go into like a highway business type of location. But, I'm sure we can find, office, zoning or something where we can place it. Yeah, if you want to define it and limit what you can do there, I think it has to be segregated from the conversation about recreational marijuana, which to me is more like a liquor store where people are constantly coming and going for a dispensary, because you're not limited by prescription. And it's, it could go in the same place, but it might not. And we haven't had that conversation.
So also the state law, it's still in flux too, right? I think when they finally come back with, needing to define a lot of this, that might inform what we do as well. So I think it's a good idea to have it separate and distinct. And when the law is defined in that regard, it will just inform us on our ability to manage it, I guess is the word I'm looking for.
Right. Yeah, if somebody opens a medical marijuana dispensary, and they hope at one point to convert it to recreational, they may not be able to. It really will come down to whether recreational marijuana is legal in the town of Southampton and where, if so, where it's legal. So, but medical marijuana, the rules are out there. There are companies that do this. There's one again in Riverhead, and my understanding of it, it's not a problem traffic wise. It's very low traffic impacts. So somebody wants to open up a medical marijuana dispensary. I think we should define it so it doesn't become something other than that. So it doesn't become a retail outlet for, hemp products and a million other things. I think, limited ancillary uses may be okay, but I think you need to define it.
Okay.
And then figure out where it belongs. And then bring that back to us.
Okay, I can do
Well,
that.
that's just my opinion. So, but anybody else
Yeah.
have a?
Totally agree, 100%.
Great.
I agree with you as well, Supervisor. And also New York State consolidated law has cannabis broken out into its own section, including medical uses for cannabis too. So.
Oh, that's good.
Mhm.
John, you okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Great. Great. So those are all the three I have for now. And I'll just, we'll work on that down in my office to prepare those items we discussed and, to be continued.
And Janice, just one other thing, and I know I've had some discussions with you offline, but I really like this idea of mixed-use zoning, where we can combine, smaller retail with some housing, probably largely affordable housing, like apartments over retail, and what type of zones those might go into, but sort of creating vibrant little pockets, places where people don't have to constantly drive to get basic goods or whatever it is. Rather than just have this homogeneous type of zoning where this goes here and this goes there, where we can combine a couple different uses together. It just seems like that's the direction things are going, around the country. And I feel like our zoning code really doesn't have that. We have, this is where all your offices go, and this is your residential zones, and these are, your more industrial zones. But there's these, these areas that might be like downtown and village, near a downtown walk to various things that could be a combination of both residential and commercial.
Well, we have, when you're saying that, I'm thinking of Spion Commons, where we have a mixture
Perfect
of,
example.
and
did
it's
it
working
there.
really well right now. It's they're getting retail tenants in, new coffee shops and things like that, and it becomes part of the area, and it seems to be
I think that's a good model, except that's like 90% residential and like 10% commercial. And I think, what I'm thinking, I think is more of a blend, like 50-50, but but why not? So that idea though, John, and we don't have PDD legislation. So we really, right now, you can't mix uses. There's no mechanism really to mix uses that I'm aware of. We did it on that one. I think we split zoned it, right, Janice?
That's right. You did. It was VB in the front and multifamily in the back.
Yeah, so what I'm imagining is more of the apartments are over the commercial. So like you have like a little plaza, like a square, maybe, like the Watermill Square, like a center like that, but you have apartments above and little, cafes and things below it, that kind of thing. And
I think that's really smart growth. I think that's it's true. And our comp plan does recommend those kinds of things. So the time is now to start looking at that.
So
I agree.
Could you develop like a mixed use complex that we could all, maybe by special exemption standards, that could go in, maybe a highway business zone or whatever the appropriate zone is. Maybe if it's close enough to a village or downtown area, where,
Sure, we'll take a
where it
look at
might
that.
make sense. And
Yeah, I think
maybe it's an overlay that the town board has to place.
I think that's captured in the what we had developed for, like, in Spion Commons, right? We had done that. I thought that there was some particularly in our housing plan, you might check that. I seem to recall reading something about that as far as affordable housing and complexes, rather than just being housing, being more of a center for tenants and for people living there, having small retail to do that. I don't know what the right balance is between those two. 50-50 sounds a little high to me, because it's there to serve as opposed to, but Janice, I would suggest maybe check the housing plan or check out.
Well, whatever that blend is, and in terms of the housing, I think we have to figure out the percentage of affordability there too. So, do we want, some market rate housing? Do we want it all affordable, or do we want basically some sort of blend, 30% affordable, 50% affordable, whatever that might be? I think those are details that we could sort out. But right now, there's no mechanism to do it. We have no way to get to mixed use zoning other than like that split lot thing where we zone a portion of the property one thing. And then again, you're not blending, you're segregating. You've got your commercial here and your residential beside it, rather than taking the residential and putting it on top of the commercial. So,
well, there's an aesthetic standard there, that you're talking about, because in Spion Commons, I think they did that really well. So you don't see a distinct line. It's melted together in a really nice way. You can't see the difference, and so there's a standard there. I think from our architectural review boards and planning boards and things like that to put those standards in as you evolve that. But I
agree that we can, as you know, I worked on designing that whole thing, and it was kind of a bear trying to figure that out. And so, but you came around with some really good solutions, and all of you on the board, and we worked on it with the developer, and it really turned out to be something great. So I hear you where you want to go with it, and I'm happy to, come up with some standards, and it's an iterative process, right? Like, so what is this overlay or this standard that you want to follow? And we can lay it out and take a look at it for sure.
Yeah.
Good. Another avenue that has been used in the past is Hamlet office and going to the zoning board for variances. So this has happened, but I like this method a lot better. We get our standards on there and what we want to see and how we want our communities to grow and develop. It's also off use. People would go to work during the day, and then parking would be used for the commercial establishments during the day when the parking is available. So it's a good idea.
Yep.
And I don't know if anyone ever had the chance to see the apartments above those shops at Spion, but whoever is living in them is psyched because they're awesome. Like, it's really nice.
Well, they're not above the store. It's beyond. I don't know that there's apartments.
It is, yeah, right above the community center, and
really?
the other side
Okay.
above the, yeah.
it's blended together, and there are people living over the commercial.
Oh, good.
Oh, yeah,
So-
yeah. And that was what I was saying, that why you kept it, split zone. So you accomplished that in VB because it was VB, but that was the only reason why, like, to land something new there, like the supervisor was saying, it didn't exist. You had to use this combo situation. So.
Yeah. Well, VB, I guess VB allows for an apartment above a commercial.
Right.
Right.
Right. Okay. So we'll get to that as well. So I've got these three, code amendments for the use tables and the special exception standards, and then we'll start delving into creating some mixed use categories that you can think about.
Excellent.
Great. So you'll have that by Friday for us?
Yeah. Sure. Well, we'll be back sooner than later. So, because we just want to get these things sorted out, and, there's a lot of other ones. So just if I could come back regularly and tell you about them and get the code kind of where it needs to be, that would be great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Janice.
You're welcome.
All right.
Bye.
So let's go to some updates. I could start. Actually, I was over at the commercial dock yesterday, so that project is going. They're redoing the bulkhead on sort of the western portion there. Looks good. It's a lot more work to go, but that work is going. I was out by the North Sea Recreational Complex, and pickleball courts are almost done. They were resurfacing them yesterday, or not surfacing. They're brand new. So they'll be done, I think, sometime this month. I think maybe just another week or two. So that's great too. Those will be, I'm sure, heavily utilized. A couple other updates. The solar agreement with Kearsarge is all set to get been signed now. So that's all set to go for the solar array. There's a kickoff meeting with them happening on the 19th of this month. We've started work on the site investigation at Damascus Landfill. That's part of the DEC requirements. Had the first meeting, and Tommy John was part of this, of the Traffic Solutions Task Force. We met yesterday. And we're going to meet again in 2 weeks. It was a good conversation in terms of, where we are. We had Tom Neely, who's our consultant now, presented a sort of a layout of all the roads and intersections and where some of the trouble spots are. We have that the village police officer now who's also involved on the task force. So we're looking at Montauk Highway as well as it runs through the village. And, we're hoping to get some real workable ideas, like the blinking the light at Canoe Place. That's really has made a difference in terms of traffic. Some other things that we could try, test out on a short-term basis. And if it works, then we can figure out how to make it more permanent through, road changes or signage and things like that. So it was a good first meeting. We had a state rep there. We had a county rep there. And, I think we'll see some good, by the end of the year, we'll have definitely some recommendations that we can try out to try to provide some relief to people trying to get to work in the morning and back home in the afternoon, and some relief for the back roads too, where, you're getting so much of the bypass traffic. So the 2022 tentative budget was converted to the preliminary budget last week at the special meeting. The first public hearing is scheduled for Tuesday, October 26th, 6 p.m. The budget can be viewed at the town's website. There's a free adult flu shot clinic sponsored by Stony Brook Southampton Hospital. It's going to be held at the Greek Orthodox Church of the Hamptons on October 21st. That's from noon to 8 p.m. So if you're interested in getting a flu vaccine, please take advantage of it. And I think that's all I've got at the moment. Do you guys have any other updates?
Well, I just wanted on the proposal for our CDG community solar in North Sea. We'll be meeting with the company that we hired, Kearsarge, next week, as you mentioned, and then later we'll probably have a public ribbon cutting at some point. But the meeting next week is it's a site visit, basically. That's what we're up to. We're also we're very close now on the West Hampton Beach Community Center to begin the design phase. It's the renovations that are required. We actually had a meeting yesterday there with our town clerk and looked in the facility for records keeping and other town needs. It's a large building, so there's a lot to think about on how we grow into this building going forward. But I just wanted the community to know that we're just about there to begin the design phase and start working on the interior of the building. So I'm looking forward to that. I got some other things, but I think I'll leave that for now.
John, I'm looking forward to that too. I mean, I'm hoping that we can have some town board meetings at, Hampton Bays, West Hampton, Bridgehampton.
Yeah.
Be a nice thing to get on the public when all the COVID clears away. We have been working with Parks and Rec. We have a parking management system meeting next week. We're working on that for 2023. And we're also investigating the possibility of a new outdoor recreational facility on the west side of town. So there's a lot going on.
That's an exciting project. I'm looking forward to that going forward. So,
Great.
Yep.
Just with the traffic control meeting yesterday, it was really great to have people from the different levels of government. As everybody on this call knows, you know, some of our roads are state roads, some of our roads are county roads, and so working together to help alleviate our traffic control, our traffic problem is going to be key. So it was a good start, Jay, I thought, and again, it was good to have the state and county folks present and giving input.
Anything else, Tommy John, that you wanted to add?
No, not at this time.
All right. We don't have Ryan on right now. I'm just, I'm just putting the latest numbers in. So, we're down to about 10 cases a day over the last, that's sort of been the average since late September. So we really have dropped down. We were, even a little higher for a while. So it is, it's half of what it was earlier in September. So we're definitely moving in the right direction. They still have testing available and vaccines available. In Southampton Hospital, they have, in the back of the old parish, you have the PCR testing. In the front, you have vaccines, and it was actually great to see. I was over there yesterday, and there are definitely people getting vaccinated for the first time, getting their first vaccines. I think a number of people who were reluctant are coming in. So I'd love to see what our numbers are, but we are, that 60% herd immunity we passed a while ago. We are, I'm sure, north of 80% vaccinated, and Ryan can fill us in, but it is, I know that, more is going to go indoors soon with the weather, but, with so many people vaccinated and with these numbers decreasing, I have some cause for optimism. That's not to say that we shouldn't continue to be vigilant, careful, about transmission and follow the various protocols, but the numbers are trending in the right direction, and that's very good. So is there any other updates from anyone? Okay. So we do have some executive session items. Let me pull up my agenda for a second. We have personnel and we have land acquisition, and I'm sure, I think, Jim, we have some confidential legal litigation to discuss. So I will make a motion to end our work session and go into executive session on those items.
Second.
Seconded by Councilman Schiavone. All in favor?
Aye.
And we're going to do this by phone call, correct?
Yeah, we're scheduled for